Sup nerds, I'm Tom, and today I'm going to talk about a game that I don't give a fuck about.
No. It's not at all what you think.
What I should have said is we're going to talk about a game that I initially, before playing it, took one look at it and thought I wasn't going to give a fuck. You see, I took a look at like the main board, right, with this huge grid of squares. Whoa. And then you look at your player board and hey, it's another grid of squares.
Wow.
And I was like, ugh, alright, this is just going to be some real dry Euro, but whatever. I mean, I'll try it. I'll try anything, you know? I mean, I don't really care for the theme. I know it's based on a video game. I've never played the video game, and actually I've never even heard of the video game prior to playing this game, but I was pleasantly surprised. I went from thinking I thought it was going to be like okay at best, and it was kind of phenomenal. So before I get into my opinion too much, I'll give a brief overview. I've heard people say that this is a worker placement game, and I mean like kind of. You're mostly, on your turn, you're going to take one action, and your actions are mostly going to be buying resources or buying cards. Now, when you look out at the board, there's a bunch of different resources. There are like 40-ish resources, depending on how you count it. And you have these workers that are just these little cubes. There's like different levels, like green is the lowest level and red is the next, green is the lowest level and then blue is the next level and then red. And you do kind of place your workers in a worker placement fashion, sort of. You only do it on your own board. And it's not like, you place one worker every round. It's you take an action. You can say, I want to buy this tile. What do I need to spend to buy this tile? I need to spend wood and iron. Okay, well then I'm going to place a worker on the wood and then place a worker on the iron on my player board, and then I have spent the resources in order to buy this other resource tile, right? Same thing with completing a card. This card wants these two resources up at the top. I'm going to place a worker on resource number 1, place a worker on resource number 2, which I have, and hey look, I've completed this card. I get to play it down and get the points. And that's a huge chunk of the game. So even without explaining anything else, you get the idea of what most of the game is. Now, the fact that there's like 40-something resources means that there's an awful lot of, you need to get this, to get that, to get this, to get that, to get this. There's different like levels of the resources, just like there are levels of workers. And the main way you're going to get points is by completing cards in your hand. But it's a really crazy thing of like, all of the cards have special abilities on them. Like right when you complete this card, you'll get a little action or a little bonus or something. And a lot of them, especially the ones you start with, will give you more workers. And whenever you gain more workers, which is good, because you can take an action to wipe your board clean, but you don't want to do that too often, so you want to have a bunch of workers, so you can place a bunch of workers out there until your board is all full, and then you wipe it clean. But every time you gain new workers, you also draw more cards, and what triggers the end of the game is when somebody runs out of cards. So for the first 10, 15, 20 turns, you're like, how is this game ever going to end? Because I'm playing a card, which lets me draw 2 more cards. I play a card, which lets me draw another card, So, I mean, you're playing all these cards, which means you're scoring them. You're getting a lot of points, but you're just getting more and more and more. I mean, eventually it does even out because you're going to be drawing the more expensive cards that get you more points, and those won't have get more workers, thus more cards on them. And some of them have where you get to burn other cards from your hand, which you might be like, why would I want to burn other cards? Because I want to score them. Yeah, but sometimes you do just kind of want the game to end, and also you may be looking at a lot of cards. And again, since there's so many resources, you can be like, look, I can finagle my way into getting the resources for this card and this card, but these other cards, in order to get the resources that they want, I'm going to have to buy 5 resources or hope that one of the opponents that I have gets that resource and I can use it from them. And that's definitely another positive about this game, is there is a lot of player interaction. Using other players' resources is a big part of the game. So when I'm saying that there's all these resource tiles up on the board, most of the tiles out there are resources, but there are some ships, which is another little thing that makes them, I mean, you still kind of purchase them the way you purchase resources, but they're a little bit different, and I'll explain that. One type of ship will give you trade goods, which basically you have to spend X amount of these little tokens in order to use an opponent's resource. They'll gain a gold for that, which is something that's good for them, but you don't really have to spend a worker, so that's pretty good. So you could spend some time buying some ships and stuff to get more of those resources, which you're going to need. They're trade resources or trade goods, whatever they're called. Those little brown tokens are definitely beneficial. I mean, you want to buy as many resources as you can yourself so that other players want to trade with you, and then you get gold, which is good. But at a certain point, you're going to have to look at what everyone else is playing, especially because in a 3 or 4 player game, there's only 2 copies of every resource tile. So at a certain point, you're going to have to use other players' stuff. And then there are some other really big tiles that are essentially just expanding your own board. But there's a ship that has like these little sword tokens on them that you have to use in order to buy those big tiles. So yeah, it's more than just buying resources to complete cards. There's, a couple other avenues, and there's like endgame scoring cards and other little things, like missions in the middle of the board. Oh, whoever has the most of this will get 10 extra points, stuff like that, which again, it's really good. I just want to say that the core of the game is really straightforward and simple. And like, as long as I explain to you those 2 things of like, spending resources is just placing a worker on a resource, and then you've spent it essentially, and you're mostly just going to be buying those resources and cards, and then to a certain extent you're going to buy some ships and buy some boards to extend your personal board and stuff like that. But it seems so simple, and the reason why I love it is because it's so elegant in the rules, and yet you're just constantly looking at like, how do I get this? And how do I get that? And how do I get this? And you're kind of brain burnering yourself a little bit with things that all make sense and that are simple rules, but you're just like, okay, I need to get that first, then I can get this, then I can get that, then I'm out of workers, so I need to take a turn to reset, and then I'll have this spot will be clear, so then I can place a worker here and there to get this. And it also just feels really good to score tons and tons and tons of cards. You can have like 20 cards in your hand, and again, you could be thinking, man, when is this game ever going to end? But also you're like, who cares? 3 points, 3 points, 3 points, 3 points, 5 points, 5 points, 8 points, 8 points. Like, that just feels so good. Now, I don't want to oversell it, because I do think that part of the reason why I liked it so much is because my expectations were so low. I was so kind of blown away. I thought it was going to be so dry. I mean, some people will see it as being dry, but definitely not as dry as I thought it was going to be. And it just feels really good to get tons and tons of resources and score tons of cards and have tons of people constantly giving you gold so they can use what you've got. That being said, it's not perfect. It's not super combo-y. I mean, there is, I guess, one of the negatives that I have about it is you get dealt a bunch of cards at the beginning of the game, and there's a lot of random in there where you could get dealt a bunch of cards that all require the same resource, so you only have to buy a couple resource tiles in order to score a bunch of cards early on that can really help you sort of get a bit of an engine going. But I mean, everybody's got that randomness, and if you are only buying a couple of tiles and other players are buying more tiles, then you have a more likelihood that you're going to be using their stuff with trade resources. So, it doesn't feel super great early on. He feels like there's a lot of random, but I think it's overall kind of balanced. Obviously, I do not care about the theme at all, so I guess that's a little bit of a negative. Some of the art is a little bit clunky, like it looks like it's like pixelated on some of the player boards, which just seems like it was a small file that they tried to expand. And there are a couple cards with some special abilities that are a little bit clunky, because like you can gain those trade resources or those little sword tokens, but like they go away if you do if you do a reset, but you could play the card and not trigger it, I think, And also the player aids aren't super great. Like, of course, I have tons of like little complaints, but overall, I was surprisingly impressed. I was kind of blown away with how much I enjoyed it, especially given the fact that I didn't think it was going to be all that great. And I would implore you to give this game a try, especially if you're looking at it thinking, oh, it's just going to be yet another dry Euro. It's totally not. It feels really great to score tons of cards and to have tons of stuff. It's going to be a little bit brain burnery, and you do kind of feel like, you get it a little bit better the more you play it, because you kind of realize like, oh, I need to get this to get this to get that. I mean, you're not going to memorize all the little tech trees all over the place, but you will feel like, all these purple resources, those are really high level. I'm not even going to worry about those. I'm going to let somebody else buy them. I'll just trade those for a couple of 8-point cards, and I'll just score as many 3s as I can, or something like that. But hey, overall, this game gets a high recommendation from me. You should definitely check it out. We're going to have a purchase link for this game in the description box down below. Also down there is going to be a link for Game Toppers. And you know what to do. Subscribe and you'll never be bored.